My dear students, welcome. Now let us have a quick revision on biodiversity and conservation. Okay. Now, what is meant by biodiversity? It is the heterogeneity. Heterogeneity means different types, variations exist not only among the species level, but all levels of organization, biological organization. What is meant by biological organization? One type of biological organization is this. We have cells organized into tissues, tissues into organ into organism. So, how many types of, and the cells are formed from some basic chemical compounds. So, the different types of chemical compounds, they are organized into cells, and different kinds of cells, and different types of tissues, different types of organs and organisms. This is one type of biological organ. So, everywhere we see this heterogeneity or variation. And that variation is known as this diversity. Everywhere we can see the variation, and that is known as this diversity. And biodiversity, the term is popularized by sociobiologist Edward Wilson. To describe the combined diversity at all levels of biological organization. All sorts of diversity is combined, and that is included under biodiversity. And there are three types. Basically, there are three types of biodiversity. One is known as genetic diversity. Second is ecological diversity. And third is species diversity. What is meant by genetic diversity? There's a single species, diversity within a single species, maybe within the different varieties of a single species, or the single species at so high diversity at a genetic level on its distributional levels. The single species may be present here, it may be present in Tamil Nadu, it may be present in Rajasthan. So the same single species will be showing the different flowering color may be different, flowering timing may be different, like that. So the single species, so high diversity at the genetic level over its distributional range. Distributional range means, for example, one example is given, Ravolfia vomitoria. Ravolfia vomitoria is growing in the foothills of Himalaya and in different elevations of Himalaya. And from this Ravolfia vomitoria, a drug known as reserpine is extracted. Now, at different levels, the quantity, at different levels, the potency and the concentration, quantity and quality of this reserpine is different at different levels of the same species. The reserpine obtained from all these plants growing at foothills of Himalaya, almost 1,000 feet and 2,000 feet and different levels of Himalaya. All these places, all these elevations, the same species shows variations in the potency and concentration, quality and quantity of the reserpine. And India had 50,000 genetically different strains of rice, paddy or Rhiza sativa, paddy, same species, same variety, same genus has more than 50,000 genetically different types of varieties and different thousand varieties of mango, Mangifera indica, 1,000 varieties of mango. So that is diversity within a single species. Second is species diversity, number of species. For example, the number of species in this amphibian population, the number of species will be higher in Western Ghats than in Eastern Ghats. Western Ghats, these amphibians, they require cooler conditions. So cooler and wet conditions, like a frog, like that animal. So they require cooler or wet condition. And that is more in Western Ghats. And Eastern Ghats, the Tamil Nadu forest, that is almost dry forest. So this number of amphibian species will be higher in the Western Ghats than in Eastern Ghats. And ecological diversity means this, if we see, look at India. So this is Western Ghats. Here we have Eastern Ghats. This is Assam forest. This is the Eastern Himalaya, Western Himalaya, Rajasthan desert region, like that. So if we look at India from this Himalayas to this tip of Arabian Sea, we have different types of ecosystems. There's deserts, rainforests, mangroves, coral reef, wetlands, estuaries, alpine, and a huge sea and marine area. Like that, we have a different types of ecosystems, and this is known as a greater ecosystem diversity than in a Scandinavian country like Norway means, or a Scandinavian country, a European country. So we have almost all the ecosystem conditions of the world in India, from Himalayas to the Arabian Sea. So all sorts of ecosystem conditions. So that is known as this ecosystem diversity. Now, these ecosystems are well established. They are fully balanced now, and it has taken millions of years of evolution to diversity to accumulate this diversity. Millions of years, and if we could lose all the wealth less than 2 centuries, within 200 years, if the species losses continue. Current loss of species and extinction of species. Main reason is man. So that is, it will be complete. This species losses continue at the present rate. The wealth, the nature's wealth, which has accumulated within taken millions of years of evolution, will be lost within 200 years. Now, how many species are there in India, on Earth and in India? And according to IUCN, there is a number of plant and animal species is slightly more than 1.5 million. So that is according to the IUCN calculation. And some extreme calculations range from 20 to 50 million. So this IUCN 1.5, some extreme calculations, they say it is 20 to 50 million. But Robert May, using some mathematical calculations, he has arrived at a conclusion: the global species diversity will be 7 million. That is, it is almost accepted by all. Robert May calculations is almost accepted by all. Now this what all sorts of species are seen on this. This more than 70% of all species recorded are animals, while plants, including all the groups, coming in only 22%. And among animals, insects are the most rich, most species rich, and 70% of the total is insect. So that more than 70% of collected species will be animals, out of which insects have more than 70%. That means 10 animals. If we caught 10 animals, out of these 7 will be insects. So out of every 10, there will be 7 insects. Again, what is the number of these fungi species? The world fungi species is the combined total of fishes, amphibians, reptiles, mammals, etc. So this is the number of fungi species, approximate number. It is the number of these fishes, amphibians, reptiles, and mammals. So this much is the quantity of fungi species. Now, next you must study this these pie diagrams. All these pie diagrams you must study. And we have this is angiosperm, and this is fungi, number of fungi almost equal to or more than equal to this fungi angiosperms. We have lichen, small group, algae, and fern and mosses, and maximum fungi and angiosperms. Now we don't have an exact figure of this what is called prokaryotic organisms. We do not have an exact figure, almost or approximate figure of prokaryotic organisms, because there are 2 reasons. Number 1 is conventional taxonomic methods are not suitable for identifying all these microbes. Second is many of these are not culturable. That is second reason. Many of these are not culturable in the laboratory. So only if we collect the species and culture it and study the life cycle, then only we can classify the organism. So it is not, many of the species are not culturable in the lab condition. And first condition, that is the second reason. First reason is conventional taxonomic methods are not suitable for identifying or classification of many of the many of the prokaryotic organisms. And if we found out a new technique or biochemical or molecular criteria, then the number of diversity of these prokaryotes will run into millions. Okay. Next. Now, what is the condition of India? How many species are present in India? So, India land area of India is only 2.4% of the world land area, and we have this species diversity is 8.1% species diversity, and this is a small area, a small land area with the maximum number of species diversity. Such countries will be named as mega diverse countries, and India is one of the 12 mega diverse countries of the world. And so, according to May's global estimate, only 22% of plants and animals have been discovered. So, more than 3 lakh plants and 1 lakh plant species and 3 lakh animal species yet have to be discovered from India. But will we be able to ever discover all these plant and animal species? It is not possible because there are 3 reasons. Number one, consider the immense manpower, taxonomies and people going for collection of these plants and animals and identifying it. So huge manpower is required. Second is the time. Second reason is the time required for collection and identifying of this and classifying and identifying these organisms. That also require huge lot of time. And third point, the situation appears to be more hopeless when we realize the fact that a large number of these species face threat of becoming extinct even before we discover them. Even before we discover the many species, they would have become extinct. That is why Nature's biological library is burning even before we catalog the titles of the book stocked there. So we cannot, before we reach the species, suppose we from one end of the earth, we are just, or India, we are just numbering or identifying the species, a huge time consuming process, huge manpower, huge money. And even then, even if we are doing the process, suppose whenever we, each day, many species are becoming extinct. So this, before we catalog, before we identify each species, many species become extinct. So now we will be never able to get it, never we will be able to get almost an approximate estimate of these plants and animals to be discovered. So 3 reasons. Number one, consider the immense trained manpower and time required to complete the situation. And the situation appears to be more hopeless when we realize that large fraction of these species are threat to becoming extinct even before we discover them. Nature's biological library, this is a good statement. Nature's biological library is burning even before we catalog the titles of all the books stocked there. Okay. Now, what is the pattern of distribution? What is the pattern of distribution of this biodiversity? There are 2 main patterns of diversity. One is described in our book. That is, one is latitudinal distribution and species area curve. Species area curve or species area relationship of Humboldt. Thus, we have to study 2 types of distribution, latitudinal and species area curve relationship. What is meant by the latitudinal distribution? Suppose we take the globe. Here we have this equator, 0 latitude, and 23.5 degree north and 23.5 degrees south. We have this tropical region. Then we have subtropical and temperate, and lastly in about 90 degrees we have polar regions. So these are the distribution, and as we move, maximum number of species diversity is seen in the tropical regions. There are different reasons that we will see later on. So maximum number of species diversity is seen in the tropical regions, and as we move from the tropical region towards the polar regions, polar regions. That means from lower latitude to higher latitudes, the number of species diversity, number of species decreases. As we move from this tropical region towards the polar regions, the number of species decreases. And this, and some examples are also given. Then that is there are few examples. That is yes, Colombia. Colombia located almost near. It is not actually in the equator. It is almost in the equator. They have 1,400 species birds. Whereas there's a Greenland, 70, almost, it is almost close to the polar regions. They have only 56 species of birds. Whereas India is almost, almost in tropical latitude, we have 1,200 species of birds. Similarly, this Amazon forest, which is located in this tropical regions, have 10 times of vascular plants than in the Midwest of USA. Then, what is the Amazon forest? That is supposed to be the lungs of the planet, and we have tropical Amazon forest. We have a greatest biodiversity on earth is seen on Amazon forest. We have these 40,000 species of plants, 3,000 fishes, 1,300 species of birds, 427 mammals, 421 amphibians, 378 reptiles, and more than 125,000 vertebrates. And there is no exact or approximate estimate of this insect species. There is no approximate insect species. If we estimate, it may go up to at least 2 million types of insects in tropical rainforest. So all these data you must study by heart. Then, why these tropical regions have maximum number of species diversity? There are three reasons for the presence of more diversity in these tropical regions. One is speciation is generally a function of time. That means for the formation of species, there must be undisturbed time. And unlike temperate regions, which has subjected to frequent glaciation, about 4 or 5 glaciation has taken place. Thousands of years, the Earth will be in this northern hemisphere or in the temperate cooler regions. The Earth will become covered by this ice or snow. So there's and whereas this tropical regions, it remain almost undisturbed. So there is what is called a speciation, generally require a function of time, undisturbed evolutionary time. That was more in tropical latitudes. So that is one of the reasons. These tropical latitudes have remained relatively undisturbed for millions of years, thus had a long evolutionary time for species diversification. Second is tropical environments, unlike temperate regions, are less seasonal. We have a rainy season and a summer season. Even if the rainy season is there, we have almost, it is not continuously raining for the 3 or 4 months. It will be raining for some time, it will be raining in a day, and after some time sun will shine like that. So it is almost predictable climatic conditions. It is not drastic climatic conditions as in the temperate regions. It will be very cooler. The year 3 or 4 months, it is very what is called very cold, and 1 or 2 months it is almost 20 to 25 degrees Celsius. Like that, it is not like that. We have almost constant environment. Then the constant environments promote speciation, lead to greater species diversity. And third condition is there is more sunshine, direct sunshine on the tropical regions, which contributes to higher productivity, which in turn contribute to greater diversity. So these are the three reasons why the tropical latitudes have this maximum biodiversity. First is undisturbed evolutionary time for species diversity. Second is this the climate relatively more constant and predictable climatic conditions. And third is more solar energy in the tropical regions, which contribute to higher productivity, which in turn contribute to greater diversity. Now, what is meant by this species area relationship? This was developed by this German naturalist known as Alexander von Humboldt. He developed this after many years of studies in this Amazon forest. And according to him, this observe that this the statement, his statement is like this: within a region, species richness is increased with the increasing explored area. In the increase in study area, the number of species will go on increasing, but only to a certain limit. But only to a certain limit. Then even if we increase the study area, the species richness will not, maybe one or two species may increase or one or two species may decrease. So as we increase the study area, the number of species species richness increases, but only up to a certain limit. After this, there will not be any considerable increase or decrease in the species area. So within a region, the species richness is increased with increasing explored area means study area, but only up to a limit. In this relation, in fact, the relationship between species richness and an area of wide variety of taxa, whatever may be the species richness, it may be angiosperm plants, birds, bats, whatever it may be, the same result will be obtaining. And actually, he obtained this rectangular parabola graph. This is the rectangular parabola graph, that is, and S is equal to CA-Z. This is Z, CA-Z. And when logarithmic scale is applied both to this S side and CA-Z side, we have log scale, log S is equal to log C plus Z log A. This is how this species area relationship is calculated. Now, if we study this Z, the value of this Z slope of regression is 0.1 to 0.2, regardless of taxonomy. Any organism we study, and in any place you study, it may be this, regardless of the taxonomy group, whether it is plants in Britain or California, mollusk in California or New York, and like that, the slope of regression in a small area, the slope of regression will be 0.1 to 0.2 SZ value. Whereas if we increase this study area a bit more, if we increase the study area, it will be coming to 0.6 to 1.2. And if we take a huge area, the tropical forest, the large tropical forest of all the continents, the slope of regression is found to be 1 to 1.15. So as we move, if we increase the study area, naturally the slope of regression is going on increasing. Now, next point is what is the importance of species diversity in the ecosystem? So how this ecosystem is related to species diversity? So there is a statement that for many decades, ecologists believed that communities with more number of species generally tend to be more stable. A stable community, that means the community with more species will be more stable. Now, what is meant by stability? Stability has 3 points. What is meant by when a community becomes stable, it should show 3 conditions. A stable community should not show much variation in productivity. This is the first condition. The stable community should not show much variation in productivity from year to year. Second condition, it must be resistant or resilient. That is the second condition. Resilient means even if some environmental disturbances, natural or man-made disturbances takes place, it will spring up to the original. It will come back to the original condition within a few years. That is resilience nature or resistant to man-made or natural perturbances, disturbances. And third condition is it must be resistant. It must also be resistant to invasions by alien species from the different ecosystems. So coming into another ecosystem, so alien species. So these are the conditions that makes a stable, the features of a stable community. So more number of species means the stable community is more stable, ecosystem is more stable, and the 3 reasons: it should not show much variation in productivity. That is the first feature. Second feature is it is either resistant or resilient to occasional disturbances, whether it is natural or man-made. And third is it must be resistant to alien species invasion. Okay. Now, David Tillman conducted a long-term experiments of outdoor plots to provide some to test all these 3 points. He made huge plots. He divided the huge plots into small plots, and some have more number of species, some have less number of species, and he found that after the experiments long-term, this is David Tillman's long-term ecosystem experiment on outer plots. He found that this Tillman found that plots with more species show less year-to-year variation in total biomass. Less year-to-year variation in total biomass. He also showed that increased diversity contributed to higher productivity. So the same conditions of a stable community is proved by David Tillman's long-term outdoor ecosystem experiments. Now, so what will happen? What is the necessity for so much species of plants and animals? Instead of we had at least 20,000 ants, why? If there is only 15,000 ants, we have more than 20,000 ants and species. Suppose we have only 15,000. What will happen to Earth? So that experiment, the answer for this question is given by Stanford ecologist Paul Ehrlich. Stanford ecologist Paul Ehrlich. He stated that it is according to his rivet popper hypothesis. He considered ecosystem as a big aeroplane. Big aeroplane, and there are, as you know, there are many joints, thousands of rivets or joints. And so aeroplane to a big ecosystem, and the joints, there are thousands of nuts and bolts, and each one, or rivets, each one is compared to a species. Suppose every passenger traveling in that particular plane takes away some of these rivets, and the plane may go. The safety of the flight may be and may not be affected. That means if some of the species are being lost from an ecosystem, the ecosystem may go on living. But when the most important rivet, the rivet with regard to a plane, it is the wings. When the rivets on the wings are lost, the plane will collapse. The plane will be destroyed. What is called the plane will be fall down. So that means the most important species of an ecosystem is key species. When the key species is lost, this ecosystem will become what is called, it will be disturbed, or ecosystem will be, sometimes the ecosystem will perish. So that is number of species. Why so many species of plants and animals? The answer for this is given by Stanford ecologist Paul Ehrlich according to his rivet popper hypothesis. Aeroplane to a large aeroplane to an ecosystem, and each species is compared to a rivet. Passengers taking away rivets, that means the species are becoming more and more extinct, and in the beginning it may not affect the flight, or it may not the functioning of the ecosystem may not be affected initially, but later on, the most important rivet of the wings are removed, the plane will collapse. Similarly, when the most important species of an ecosystem is known as key species, if that is lost, that become extinct, the ecosystem will perish. So there's a keystone that is known as keystone species. And these keystone species that will be controlling all the activities of the ecosystem, keystone species. Now, this typical example is of keystone species is this flying fox of this Pacific Ocean. When the flying fox, it is a tree-dwelling animal, and it is actually controlling what is called this pollination and seed dispersal. When it jumps from one tree to another tree, it will be carrying pollen grains on its body, and when it jumps on the other tree, the pollen grains will be used for pollination. So, and it is jumping for collecting fruits, and on the way of jumping, the seeds will be, after eating the fruits, the seeds will be dispersed different places, and the seeds will develop into new trees. But after this, when this flying fox become extinct, the new trees did not develop. Later on, the complete area, huge area of forest, they just collapsed. Due to this, there is no trees, no forest development took place. When studies were conducted, it was known that this flying fox was this main keystone species. Now, loss of biodiversity. This the biological wealth of our planet has been declining, and the accusing finger is pointing towards the human beings. Each species are becoming more and more extinct, and accusing finger, we are the people who are making most of the species become extinct. According to this colonization of tropical Pacific islands by humans, according to this, led to the extinction of more than 2,000 species of native birds. And according to IUCN list, this extinction of 784 species, including vertebrates, 359 invertebrates, and 87 plants, and within the last 500 years. Some of the extinct, some examples are extinct of dodo birds and quagga, thylacine, cellular sea cow, and 3 species of tiger, Bali, Javan, and Caspian in the last, Then in the last 20 years, about 27 different species have become extinct. So these are the estimates of species loss within a span of 500 years. 784 species, including 338 vertebrates, 359 invertebrates, 87 plants has become lost. And some example, dodo of Mauritius, hog of Africa, thylacine of Australia, stellar sea cow, and the stellar sea cow is just hunted for its meat, and it became this extinct. And similarly, Bali, Javan, and Caspians, there were 7 species, subspecies. A tiger of these 3 completely become extinct. Bali, Javan, and Caspian has become completely extinct. Now, this nowadays, adding to this fact that nowadays the problem is it is not each individual species. Some groups may appear to be vulnerable for extinction. Some groups, the most important group or the most vulnerable group for extinction is amphibians. So each group, this amphibian species may become extinct soon because the area of this wetland area is slowly decreasing. So now it is not individual species, it may be a group itself may become extinct within a short time. And a typical example is amphibian species. And when we come to this extinction, this before the evolution of man, about during the last 3 billion years, or since the origin and diversification of Earth, 5 episodes of mass extinction has taken place. 5 episodes of mass extinctions. But the 6th one is going on now. This is drastic. The rates of species extinction is said to be 10, 100 to 1,000 times faster than pre-human times. Before the appearance of man, it had these 5 episodes of mass extinction, but after the appearance of man, the rate of extinction has increased to 100 to 1,000 times. And what are the causes of biodiversity loss? First cause is this habitat loss and fragmentation. The tropical evergreen forest, 14% of Earth's surface, now it has came down to 6% only. And in many of the Amazon forests, for soybean cultivation, many huge areas, and for grassland cultivation, this is for export, and this is for feeding cattle. A huge area of these Amazon forests have been degraded. And the degeneration habits led to survival of this degradation, survival of many species. When large habitats like huge forests are broken into small fragments due to various developments like highway development or dam construction, etc., when huge area is fragmented, the mammals and birds requiring large territories with the migratory habitats will be badly affected. So that such animals and such birds with a migratory nature will be badly affected if a huge area is prime. Suppose elephants. Elephants daily travel large distances, and suppose we fragment the distances traveled by elephants, huge forest area into different segments, like one for dam, one for construction, highway, etc. Then such their migratory path will be blocked, and that will be affecting these animals. So similarly, this is such the badly affected, leading to the population decline. So this is fragmentation. This is one of the most important reasons for plants and animals leading to extinction. Next is this overexploitation. Or exploitation. So when our need turns greed, it leads to the over exploitation of natural resources. For example, this within last 500 days, Steller's sea cow and passengers pigeon both were this hunted, and they became extinct due to this. Just for their meat, they were hunted. And their population is just became extinct. In a similar way, there is alien. Third condition is alien species invasion. Alien species invasion. When a new species are introduced, whatever, unintentionally or deliberately, this whatever may be the purpose, some of them turn invasive and cause decline and extinction of indigenous species. Many animals are introduced without any studies being conducted. What will be the after effect of such and such an animal is introduced in a particular region, like that? Or many plants, we introduce many plants, especially garden plants. So some of them may become invasive and destroy our natural populations. For example, in the Lake Victoria in East Africa, there's Nile perch, that huge fish, carnivorous fish, was introduced into this Lake Victoria. Then what happened is it became about 200 species of cichlid fish became extinct due to the introduction of this Nile perch. It just predated all these 200. It is not 200 cichlid fish. It is 200 species of cichlid fish became extinct. Similarly, we have Lendana camara and water hyacinth introduced for the beautiful flowers, etc. And this introduction of African catfish, Clarius garipinus, all these may have the threat, this posing a threat to indigenous catfish and other organisms in our rivers. Next is co-extinction. Co-extinction means the species, when a particular species become, the plant and animal associated with it also become extinct. For example, there is plant pollinator relationship, etc. So a particular, we have already studied in the second chapter that is a particular yucca plant, it will be pollinated particular moth. If the yucca plant became extinct, the moth cannot exist. It cannot lay eggs anywhere else. Similarly, so that will also become extinct. So if moth is not there, no other insect can pollinate the yucca flower, but both of them will become extinct. So that is co-evolution, co-evolved plant pollinator mutualism. So when one species became extinct, the species, the plant and animal species associated with it also will become extinct. Why should we conserve this biodiversity? There are three reasons. There are four reasons. We can consider it into four reasons. One is narrowly utilitarian. We derive a lot of direct economic benefits from nature, that is cereals, pulses, fruits, firewood, for construction material, tannin, lubricants, dyes, perfume, etc. Several such things we are getting from this forest area. So that is narrowly utilitarian. And another condition is broadly utilitarian. Broadly utilitarian means broadly utilitarian is the biodiversity that plays a major role in the ecosystem services. Biodiversity without our knowledge, biodiversity is giving many ecosystem services. For example, the oxygen. This Amazon forest is providing 20% of total oxygen for this world, so this Earth atmosphere. So 20% from the Amazon forest. So if the Amazon forest is degraded, this 20% oxygen is lost. So that is one point. So another is pollination. Without our knowledge, we are just plant seeds, and after when the seeds, the plants flower, the insects and other natural things come and pollinate the plant. So we get fruits, vegetables, etc. Without any of our intervention, this nature is bees, bumblebees, birds, bats, etc. They do pollination, and we get the benefit of fruits and vegetables, etc. So that is another thing. The next is the aesthetic pleasure. The mental pleasure or aesthetic pleasure, walking through a thick forest or watching flowers bloom or this like that, or watching a seashore like that. So the aesthetic pleasure. Fourth one is the ethical argument. The biodiversity relates to what we owe millions to plants and animals, microbes, with whom we share this planet. We are sharing this planet with all these organisms. So we have a moral responsibility. We have a moral duty to care for their well-being, so that then only our existence will be there. If we do not care for this, the other organisms, well-being of other organisms, plants and animals, so suppose we remove many plants and animals for our these temporary benefits, so our existence will also be questioned. So to have a long-standing our existence, we must have a moral duty for the care and well-being of this our other biological legacy in order for future generations. So that is ethical reasons. We have a moral responsibility to protect all these organisms. Now, how we can conserve this ecosystem? There are three main points by which we can conserve. One is in situ conservation, on-site conservation, and one of the most, this particular plant or animal that is conserved there itself. To protect the plant, the tiger, we protect the huge area, so we make it a tiger reserve like that. Or a particular plant, that is to protect that particular plant, we protect that area, forest area, and we mark it as a biosphere reserve like that. So that is in situ conservation. And the most important point in situ conservation is biodiversity hotspots. What is meant by biodiversity hotspots? They are regions with high levels of species richness. That is first point, and the species richness. And second point is this high degree of endemism. Endemism, when such a species are confined to a particular region and not found anywhere else in the world. Even if we just move the plant or into another ecosystem, that plant will not or animal will not survive there. So high levels of regions of biodiversity hotspots, that is where high levels of species richness is seen. Second is high degree of endemism is seen. And initially we had 25 biodiversity hotspots throughout the world. Now 9 more is added, and now we have 34 these hotspots, and 3 of them are in India. In India, we have Western Ghats and Sri Lanka, Indo-Burma, and Himalayan regions are these 3 hotspot diversity regions in India. And next is XI-XII. This XI-XII conservation. XI-XII conservation means the plant or animal is taken outside and they are protected in special conditions like zoological park or botanical gardens like that. That is XI-XII conservation condition and XI-XII conservation. So many threatened species and plants, we can nowadays we can store the gametes and sperms we can store, and or pollen grains we can store and fertilize the eggs. So that is also a process, a modern technique of XI-XII conservation. In the same way, tissue culture methods can be used and seeds can be kept in the seed banks. These are all XI-XII conservation techniques. Another point is this sacred groves. Sacred groves, they are what is called they are untainted, undisturbed forest areas are known as sacred groves. These sacred groves are seen in human habitation regions, but they are undisturbed. And many sacred groves in Himalayas, Aravalli Hills and Rajasthan, Western Karnataka and Maharashtra, and Chanda and Bastar areas. And in Meghalaya, sacred groves are the last refuge of a large number of plants and animals. That is the last refuge. Even if that plant species or animal species is threatened or become extinct from this sacred growth, that species will become extinct. So that is the last refuge. So sacred growth, it is this forest area, or this it is due to some what is called some religious beliefs. Some forest area is protected by people, local people. That is sacred growth. And lastly, we have this biodiversity, what is called summits, the historic convention on biological diversity, Earth Summit at Rio, and in 1992 called upon nations to appropriate measures for the conservation of biodiversity and sustainable utilization. After 10 years from Rio in 2002, Sustainable Development, another world summit known as Sustainable Development, was held at Johannesburg in South Africa, and 190 countries took part in that meeting, that convention. And the aim was significant reduction in the current rate of biodiversity loss or global regions, region levels, and at local levels. We must reduce by 2010. We must achieve global significant reduction by 2010 in the biodiversity loss at world level and local level, and even in very local levels like in our villages, in our towns, in our states, like that. So these are the main points of this biodiversity. So there is a lot of things, many points. Even though the chapter is comparatively simple, there are many points to be, you must read all these points well. And this, what is meant by biodiversity, 3 types of biodiversity: genetic, species, and ecological diversity. How many species? Then this number of species, more than 70% in animals. Of these 70%, 70% is insects, then fungi population. So you must study by heart this pie diagram of page number 260. Then distribution of plants and animals on the globe, that is latitudinal distribution, and why this latitude have more number of species. Next is species area relationship weights of this Alexander Humboldt. Then importance of species diversity. Then this Paul Ehrlich, this Rivet Popper hypothesis, and loss of biodiversity and statistics, different number of different species being lost, and this biodiversity losses. The first condition is fragmentation. Major reason for biodiversity loss is fragmentation. Second is overexploitation of natural resources. And third is alien species invasions. And fourth is co-extinctions. And what is the importance of conservation of biodiversity? That is narrowly utilitarian and broadly utilitarian, like oxygen, pollination, and aesthetic pressure, etc., and ethical reasons. As we human beings, the organisms are living along with this, so we have a moral right to protect all these things. And methods for conservation is in situ conservation. Then under in situ conservation, we have endemism. And next is the sacred growth on the religious beliefs. Some areas of forest tracts are well protected by these local people. And this XI-XII conservation, that is plant or animal is taken outside into botanical gardens or zoological parks for the protection. And lastly, the historical conventions of RIA in 1992 and Sustainable Development Convention in 2002 at Johannesburg, etc. And both these conventions, they held for the reduction of biodiversity loss at world level, then country level or continent level, and in local levels, etc. Okay, so that is a quick revision on biodiversity and its conservation. Okay, we will stop here.